1 in 4 Canadians has depression significant enough to warrant treatment at some point in their life. Depression is that big of an issue. As a matter of fact, according to the World Health Organization, depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. Take a moment to let that sink in. The single most significant cause of disability, it isn't cancer, heart disease, diabetes, it's depression. And over 300 million people worldwide struggle with depression. That's something, given that there are currently about 8 billion people in the world. But despite the prevalence of depression being so high, there's hope. Depression is highly treatable, and science has uncovered strategies that are highly effective. But before we get to them, let's establish a working definition for depression. Typically, when looking at definitions for psychological disorders, we start with the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and essentially the final word on mental health diagnoses. For our purposes, I'm going to borrow a relatively brief definition of depression from the American Psychiatric Association, and they've summed it up wonderfully. Depression, also known as major depressive disorder, is a common and serious medical illness that negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. Fortunately, it's also treatable. Depression causes feelings of sadness and or a loss of activities once enjoyed. It can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems and can decrease a person's ability to function at work and at home. And to further borrow from the APA, these are the common symptoms of depression. Feeling sad or having a depressed mood, loss of interest or pleasure in activities once enjoyed, changes in appetite, weight loss or gain unrelated to dieting, trouble sleeping or sleeping too much, loss of energy or increased fatigue, increase in purposeless physical activity, for example, hand wringing or pacing, or slowed movements in speech, feeling worthless or guilty, difficulty thinking, concentrating or making decisions, and thoughts of death or suicide. And these symptoms must last at least 2 weeks for a diagnosis of depression and must not be accounted for by a medical condition. Typically, a depression measure such as the Beck Depression Inventory is used to evaluate symptom severity. So now that you have a better understanding of what depression is, let's take a closer look at depression treatment strategies. For my first strategy, I encourage you to start with a plan for the day. When mood's low, there's a tendency to get stuck and do the bare minimum of what needs to be done. And if nothing needs to be done, well, probably very little is going to happen until you feel like it. If you fall prey to this way of thinking, you could be waiting a long time. Not to mention, there's a chance your mood could dip even further. Instead, I encourage you to make a plan for the day before you go to bed. It doesn't need to be overly ambitious, but it should provide some structure to your day. If you're working or going to school, this will help you maintain structure and routine. If not, it's likely going to be hard to get moving. One of the worst things that can happen to one's mood is sitting idle for too long. And there are studies to show that we're happier when we're busier. As Isaac Newton said, a body in motion tends to stay in motion. And if you're inactive for too long, it's tough to get moving again. The body was meant to move and the mind was meant to think. And both body and mind should be active fairly consistently. For my second strategy, it's not very exciting, but it's important to take care of the basics. The basics are never fun or very sexy and often overlooked, but they are very necessary and definitely not worth skipping over. And the basics I'm referring to are drinking water, eating regular meals, and getting exercise. I'm going to start with a quick analogy here to emphasize my point. If you were a car, and yes, I know it's weird to be compared to a car, but I'm sure you've been called worse. You wouldn't run well if you didn't have oil, gas, transmission fluid, and so on. People are no different. I think that we can run properly and feel well without our primary fuel sources, water, food, and air, which air, of course, we get in abundance when we exercise. It's pretty unrealistic. Let's take a quick look at each of these areas and see what's needed to maintain and promote a healthy mood. First, there's water. So understated, yet so important. Up to 60% of your body is water, and even 31% of your bones are water. Not surprisingly, having adequate water intake and avoiding dehydration is important if you hope to function correctly. The amount of water you need varies from person to person, depending on the demands of your daily life. But according to the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, adult males should drink an average of 3.7 liters per day, and adult women should drink an average of 2.7 liters per day. That's a lot of water needed to function properly. And if you're relatively active, you need to adjust that figure upwards. And at the risk of getting too high up on my soapbox, be sure to get your water from the cleanest sources possible. Personally, I'm a fan of both reverse osmosis and distillation. Next, on our list of basics is food. Without digging too deep into this topic, our purpose here is to look at food as an energy source to help you function and feel better. Keeping that in mind, you want to consume multiple small meals throughout the day. Diets high in fiber, fruits, and vegetables are also important. And it's very important to avoid inflammatory foods, as these foods serve to make feelings of depression worse. For our final basic area, there's exercise. The general rule of thumb for exercise is that it's pretty much great for everything. And when it comes to mood, it all helps. There's studies which show that you just need to get moving in some way, shape, or form to benefit mood. However, the more demanding the exercise, the greater impact it has on mood. So if you're struggling with motivation or energy levels, it's beneficial not to do something that's more taxing. For my third strategy, I suggest chunking time to get started. So you don't need to get moving, but simply put, you don't want to move. What do? Chunk time. And self-talk around chunking time should go something like this. I just need to do whatever the task is for 5 minutes. After that, if I don't feel like it, I can stop. Once you get started, momentum will be on your side and be much more likely to keep going. On the other hand, dealing with too big of a chunk of time can feel overwhelming, and it's more likely to shut you down. What if you can't even commit to getting started at all? It's important to dig into your self-talk a bit further. And chances are, what's going through your mind is something like this. I just have no energy or motivation to do anything. Once I feel a bit better, I'll do whatever the task is. And herein lies the brutal truth about mood. If you're waiting until you feel good to do something, you'll probably be waiting a while. In actuality, you need to commit to doing whatever it is you need to do, even if it's for a short period of time, if you want to begin making improvements in mood. So with that in mind, your self-talk can be more along the lines of this. I might feel tired and unmotivated, but if I just get going and do something, the worst thing that's going to happen to me is that I still feel tired and unmotivated. And at least I've done something and I'll feel less guilty about not doing enough. For the fourth strategy, I want you to be more in tune with your body. Now, this may sound a bit odd for a strategy, but how you carry and move your body is wired into an area of your brain known as the cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is responsible for higher level cognitive processes in the brain, such as thinking, language, decision making, and so on. And making a simple adjustments with your body, especially when done consistently, can help to improve mood. We're going to look at 3 of them right now. First, let's start with smiling. This one seems so simple, and it works. Smiling is universal. It doesn't matter who you are or where in the world you live. It feels better to smile. Science has known the benefits of smiling for some time. For instance, Dr. Fritz Strack and colleagues completed a pretty ingenious study in which they had study participants put pens in their mouths. I'm going somewhere productive with this. Half of the study participants put a pen in their mouth in a manner that activated the same muscles you use when you smile, while the other group put the pen in their mouth in a different way. Results showed that study participants who had their smile muscles activated by the pen rated cartoons as funnier when compared to the other group. So simply put, activating smile muscles makes people feel better. Even faking a smile, as phony as it might feel, will still help you to feel better. For our second body-related strategy, we're going to look at adjusting the tone of your voice. When you think about this one, simply from a common sense perspective, it seems to make sense. If you talk in a low, uninspired, monotone manner, it stands to reason that you probably won't feel very good. If you talk in a higher tone and show a little excitement, it seems we should feel better. But to confirm, let's take a look at the science and see if there's support for this theory. In a 2015 study by Dr. Julian Aucoutier and colleagues, they conducted a study in which they recorded the voices of their study participants. Afterwards, they manipulated the sound of their voice to either sound happier, sadder, more agitated, and so on. The study participants were unaware that the researchers were manipulating their voices. And when their voices were played back, the tone of voice was found to impact people's emotional states. In other words, a happier tone of voice made people feel happier, while a sadder tone of voice made people feel more sad, and so on. So remember to be aware of the tone of your voice, as it can impact your mood. And for our final body-related strategy, I want you to be aware of your posture when either sitting or standing. Take a moment here to picture the posture of someone who's struggling with mood. When I do this, I envision somebody who's slouched over, their body in a loose, self-defeated stance. And for someone who's happy, I picture someone sitting or standing upright, shoulders back, in a confident, self-assured manner. Once again, let's take a quick peek at the science to see if posture can help impact mood. In a 2015 study by Dr. Aaron Nair and colleagues, they had study participants either sit up straight or slouch when completing a mock job interview. Results showed that when study participants were asked to sit up straight, they reported feeling more enthusiastic, excited, and strong. They also reported a better mood overall as well as improved sleep. Not too shabby for just a single adjustment to posture. Now for the fifth step in our plan. I encourage you to prioritize time each day to focus on what's going well in your life. Generally speaking, most people are in the habit of thinking about what they have to do or focusing on the things that aren't going well. Very little time, if any, is spent thinking about what's going well. And not surprisingly, it's hard to maintain a positive mood if the majority of your time is spent thinking this way. To help change this thinking pattern, I suggest spending even as little as 5 to 10 minutes a day focusing on what's going well in your life. When I do this, I like to start with the most important areas in life and then work my way towards the smaller ones. Here's my list. Feel free to add to it or make your own adjustments. First, start by focusing on health. This could be a physical health benefit, a mental health benefit, or a cognitive benefit, such as being able to think clearly or not having a challenge with memory. We often take these types of things for granted, but they can be very challenging if there's a significant difficulty in any of these areas. Next, I focus on the freedom we enjoy as Canadians. And once again, this might become a bit difficult to appreciate until you take a closer look at restrictions that occur in other parts of the world. Then, I often focus on the positive relationships in my life with family and friends. This is usually followed up by positive things I'm able to do during the day, such as meet with clients who are willing to open up about their daily lives and allow me to help them with achieving a goal. Next, I often think about a hobby I enjoy, or even small miscellaneous things, such as a Netflix series I might be watching at the time that's really enjoyable. Speaking of that, I highly encourage you to have something in the immediate future, as well as long-term, that you can look forward to, because what you focus on helps to determine how you feel. For the sixth strategy, it's important to set aside time to manage negative thoughts. I imagine some of you might be thinking this could be a new full-time job, especially if your moods dip notably. The goal here isn't to challenge every single thought that enters your head, but rather to take time when it's available to address the most common negative thoughts you experience. If you never take time to challenge your negative thoughts, essentially you're accepting them as being true. If you've got a consistent pattern of accepting negative thoughts, you can expect your mood to suffer. But in the spirit of evidence-based treatment, let's take a quick look at a study which examines the effectiveness of cognitive therapy on challenging negative thought patterns. In a 2010 study by Dr. Daniel Strunk and colleagues, they had 60 study participants who were diagnosed with major depressive disorder who engaged in cognitive and behavioral therapy with a therapist. Cognitive therapy involves tasks such as challenging negative thoughts and running thought experiments. In other words, testing to see if your negative thoughts are true or false. The study also had participants engage in behavioral techniques, such as participating in enjoyable activities. Results showed that cognitive therapy led to improvements in depressive symptoms, and the improvement was superior to the benefits gained from behavioral techniques, although behavioral techniques were also beneficial. So needless to say, cognitive therapy works. Now let's create a plan to utilize it. For our first step, it's important to identify negative thoughts. If you want to challenge negative thoughts, it's best to start by identifying. And this is where a thought record can help. Over the course of several days, it's helpful to set aside 5 minutes each day and write down the most common negative thoughts you experience, including a rating for the frequency and intensity of the thought. For our second step, I want you to find the negative thought you're struggling with accurately. Or said another way, if you're going to insult yourself in your mind, you might as well know what you're calling yourself. Let's say a common negative self-talk statement is, "I'm so stupid." Well, we might as well ask Google what stupid means. And according to our friend Google, stupid means having or showing a great lack of intelligence or common sense. Then, okay, maybe that can happen sometimes. That might not seem so bad until you dig into the synonyms, which are words that mean the same thing as stupid. On the list, we've got terms like brainless, slow-witted, idiotic, and moronic. Well, that's a little harsh and probably inaccurate, which leads us to our next step, which is, what's the evidence for the thought being true or false? I love the word evidence. Not enough to ever consider becoming a lawyer, mind you. But for our purposes here, evidence means, to the best of my knowledge, is this thought mostly true or mostly false? Generally speaking, if you're going to find that most thoughts are primarily false, on occasion you may find there's a little truth to a negative thought. And that's okay, but label it as such. It's just a little true in this case. That's much different than accepting a negative thought as being entirely true all of the time. Now for our fourth step, let's look at how to manage negative thoughts that are mostly false. In this case, it's really important to replace a negative thought with a more accurate positive thought. In keeping with our example, our self-talk could be something like this. "I'm not stupid, I just didn't know." Or, "I made a simple mistake. That's okay, it happens." Now for our fifth step, let's look at how to manage negative thoughts that are mostly true. And there will inevitably be times when you examine negative thoughts and come to the conclusion that, yeah, damn, that's true. For example, let's say you're caught in a lie and you have a negative thought, I'm a liar. Well, first and foremost, lying once doesn't make you a liar, because by definition, a liar would be someone who lies all the time. So in this particular instance, I lied would be a negative thought that is true. That obviously doesn't feel great, so what do you do with this statement? Drowning in this thought for an excessive period of time isn't going to help. There's nothing wrong with feeling some pain, such as feeling of guilt from the thought. But the guilt is meant to serve to be a sign to learn a lesson from the negative situation. Once you've done that, the goal is to let go of the guilt and resolve not to make the same mistake again. And you might be wondering, what do you do in a situation where you have a negative thought, or what you perceive to be negative, that you can't change or learn a lesson from? For instance, let's say the thought is, I'm too short. Well, if you're an adult in Canada and are well under the statistical average of 5 feet 8.5 inches for males and 5 feet 3.5 inches for females, the numbers are against you on this one. This leaves you with one positive choice. Accept the thought and do your best to make peace with it. In the case of being short, we can discuss a myriad of reasons why being short doesn't have to be negative or interfere with the quality of your life whatsoever. Accepting things we can't change can be difficult, but it's an important skill to work on to help improve mood. For my 7th strategy, I encourage you to use mindfulness during the course of your day. Mindfulness, also known as mindfulness meditation, may bring to mind the thought of someone sitting cross-legged, arms outstretched, with index fingers and thumbs creating circles, all the while chanting at regular intervals. And for those of you who are interested in this form of mindfulness, it works. For those of you who aren't, we'll go over the basics you need to achieve the benefits of mindfulness very shortly. But first, let's take a quick look at the science. More specifically, we're going to look at meta-analysis, which is known as a collection of studies which are statistically analyzed together. In a study by Dr. Madhav Goyal and colleagues, they examined 47 different mindfulness studies and found that not only was mindfulness effective at treating mood, but also happened to be just as effective as taking an antidepressant medication. So that's a very strong endorsement. And it doesn't need to take you that much time out of your day. The studies just show that as little as 10 minutes of mindfulness can improve learning, reduce pain, and reduce worrying. And I'm willing to bet that as little as 10 minutes of mindfulness would help to reduce depressive symptoms as well. So let's look at the 3 primary components of mindfulness. For the first step, get into a comfortable position and breathe from your diaphragm. Mindfulness doesn't need to involve sitting. There are studies that show that mindfulness can be effective when standing, jogging, or even washing dishes. The key is to get into a comfortable position and breathe slowly and deeply from your diaphragm. For the second step, it's important to have something to focus on. To maximize the benefits you can experience from being mindful, you're going to need an anchor, or put another way, something to focus on consistently. An anchor can be just about anything, as long as you're locked onto it. It could be a picture on a wall, an image in your mind, an intentional focus of your breathing, and so on. And for the third and final step, it's important to avoid engaging with your thoughts. It's not that you're comfortably breathing and locked onto something. It's time to let go of your thoughts. And this can be tough, given that we're always thinking about something. So the goal here is to allow thoughts to come into your mind and avoid judging or engaging with them. Instead, treat them as if they were thought bubbles, just showing up in a foreign language that you're unable to understand. If you find it difficult to stay focused while doing this, quickly remind yourself there are 16 waking hours in a day to deal with your thoughts, so you can afford to take 10 minutes off. Then acknowledge that you've drifted a little bit and return your focus to slow, deep breathing and locking onto your anchor. Now for our 8th and final strategy, I highly encourage you to get a good night's sleep each night. Proper sleep may be the single most overlooked aspect of mental health, in my humble opinion. And it appears that the good people in the United Kingdom might agree with me. In a 2017 study by Dr. Nicole Tang and colleagues, they conducted a survey with 30,500 people in the UK over the course of 4 years. The results of their study showed that improved sleep quality led to dramatic improvements in mental and physical health. As a matter of fact, they found that experiencing better sleep for their study participants was equivalent to winning $250,000 in the lottery. Now, it seems the Brits really like their sleep. But needless to say, consistently getting a good night's sleep is critical for maintaining a positive mood. And for the sake of brevity, I'm going to outline some of the core components that can help you achieve a good night's sleep. For starters, have a sleep routine that includes at least a 1-hour wind-down period before bed. Go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, weekends included. Keep it dark. Keep it quiet. Or use white noise or a fan if needed to block out distracting noise. Keep it cool, within a limited reason. A little cooler than room temperature usually works. Avoid ruminating, which is excessive thinking about your past or upcoming day. Have an interesting, stress-free topic to focus on. If you don't fall asleep right away, you'll need something to think about. Don't waste a lot of time tossing and turning. If you aren't asleep within the first 30 to 45 minutes, get up for 5-10 minutes and break up the monotony of this pattern. Do not check your phone. The world won't stop turning. Don't do mental math to determine how much time you'll be asleep if you fall asleep right away. Do not put too much pressure on falling asleep. This will take you further away from relaxation, which you need to fall asleep. Not to mention, just relaxing is still beneficial. And lastly, let's look to Dr. Barra, the medical director of the Valley Hospital Center for Sleep Medicine in Ridgewood, New Jersey, for guidelines on how much sleep you should be aiming for each night. The amount of sleep recommended for the different age groups across the lifespan might surprise you. For starters, there are newborns who should get 16 to 18 hours a day. Preschool-age children, 11 to 12 hours a day. School-age children should get at least 10 hours a day. Teens need 9 to 10 hours a day. Adults, ages 20 to 64, should be getting 7 to 9 hours a day. And the elderly, ages 65 and up, should still be getting 7 to 8 hours a day. So to provide a quick recap of my 8-step plan. First, it's important to start with a plan for the day. When mood's low, it can be difficult to get moving, and having a plan will help to get you some direction. Second, be sure to take care of the basics. If you're a car, you need oil, gas, and regular tune-ups to run well. As humans, we're far more complex, and we need lots of clean water, healthy food, and regular exercise to function well. For my third strategy for coping with depression, I encourage you to chunk time to get started. Low mood often leads to low motivation, which makes it even easier to feel overwhelmed. Committing to doing something small for a short period of time can help you to get moving and create some positive momentum. Fourth, making simple adjustments with your body on a consistent basis, such as smiling more, increasing the tone of your voice, and maintaining good posture can all help to improve your mood. For my fifth strategy, I encourage you to spend 5 to 10 minutes each day focusing on what's going well. What you focus on influences how you feel, so it makes sense to prioritize time to focus on the good things in your life. 6, make time to challenge negative thoughts. If you don't challenge negative thoughts, you're essentially accepting them. And most of us contend with a number of automatic negative thoughts each day. For my 7th strategy, I encourage you to weave mindfulness into your day. If you find this difficult, start with just a minute or two during the day and build from there. And for my 8th and final strategy, prioritize getting a good night's sleep. Most of us don't get enough sleep. And if sleep's a challenge, start with making a point to go to bed and wake up at a consistent time. So I hope you found these steps helpful. If you're interested in getting help with managing feelings of depression and you live in the province of Ontario in Canada, please get in touch with us at Sullivan Associates Clinical Psychology. If you enjoyed this video, like it, share it, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.